Thanks for joining the Ant Panda channel. My name's, of course, Ant Panda. We're going to go without my face today as we talk about one of the old-fashioned retro games that is something I'd like to highlight as one of the scariest or horrific games to play nowadays, and that is XCOM UFO Defense, which is known in North America, was released in 1994 by Microprose and Mythos Games. It was originally planned for the PC and also ported to Sony PlayStation 1. For the PlayStation and also European releases, XCOM UFO Defense is also known as UFO Enemy Unknown. The game itself was a sleeper hit as it was during its development done by basically the developer twice and almost canceled. However, as soon as it was released, a cult following strategy fans with an official remake that was done in 2012 with XCOM Enemy Unknown. Most of the game actually takes place during the geosphere scene, which is basically shown here, where you're able to actually view the entire Earth. I won't get into too much detail because most of the horror actually doesn't lie here. However, depending on the version of the game that you have will determine that. Most of the time with the bases that are actually put, you have to build facilities. The game essentially takes place with the story of XCOM during the geoscape, as you can see here, around 1999 or Y2K, with the aliens actually invading Earth in various activities. And in order to do so, you are the one UN defense that's funded by the most powerful nations in the world in order to ensure that extraterrestrial to not take over the Earth as they invade, land, probe, and take over different sites, as well as sway the different countries that are ultimately funding the program, with eventually allowing you to have research and development into even better weapons, better facilities, better tanks, armor, and essentially ships and vessels that'll take you beyond the confines of Earth. When a UFO is detected, you can then intercept it with various other vehicles. Interceptors that will be used to take down the UFO. And in some cases with probes like this, taking them out, being outrun, destroyed, or crash land. However, the tracking can also be lost. Once the UFO is either landed, you can either take it by surprise by sending the Sky Ranger filled full of soldiers, meet the aliens, and recover the crash site in battle. This is when truly the part in the game itself becomes very horrific, as the soldiers are then left by themselves in what feels like the middle of nowhere with only minimal weapons that sometimes won't even affect the alien. It is at this point that in the game it capitalizes on something that's very horrific for most titles of this type of strategy. The ambient music, very empty, very freakish, very curious, with the fog of war as the eternal darkness, not as a gray mist or anything like that, causes a definite type of horror when playing this game. The other thing too that makes it very spooky and freaky is the ability when walking around and trying to discover the unknown. Like X-Files on steroids, this game certainly gave me the chills late at night when defending Earth's forces against the powers of the extraterrestrials. After ending a turn, you always kind of pray and hope that no forces of aliens will attack you and shoot you from the confines of the darkness. Short-term victories of the aliens with their little ominous and soft-toned screams of death with the outlandish screams of the XCOM operatives. Hearing the different movement changes and opening of doors definitely causes a bit of a horror factor when it comes to invading different alien ships. Seeing, of course, every time ending a turn and seeing the horrific, adult, and intense comic relief of aliens in the darkness with injured XCOM operatives definitely adds an appeal to it. When it comes to one of the hardest parts of this game, terror sites are one of the worst. As soon as it pops up, it indicates that a city or a place, location, or just random place on Earth is being terrorized by aliens. Now, typically in crash sites, you usually have one or a crew of aliens that's piloting that particular UFO. However, in this case, terror sites are usually caused by massive UFOs with different varieties of aliens. And usually these aliens are the toughest of them that usually don't come up until later in the game as they ramp up the alien forces. However, in this case, with terror sites, it becomes pretty prevalent that you're in for a real gauntlet of trying to save lives. Not only are you there as support in order to capture these aliens, either kill them, subdue them, or take care of them, you're also protecting lots of local civilians that are also living in the area. These terror sites are full of innocent civilians being killed, and you are evaluated as civilians are dying. As you can see, this is the equivalent of a tank, usually that aliens bring over, but in this case it's a real live threat. No turrets, no mechanicals, or at least a combination, but it is truly horrific that you have to fight against. Another type of alien that you run into is known as floaters. A hybrid of mechanical and also biological material. The floater has the ability to actually fly around as well as use even better and more intense weapons than the sectoids or greys. Facing aliens in a terror site, as they have the ability to have even more weapons, grenades, and other things that are very sinister, horrific, and terrible. Hearing the screams and death of other civilians is also very discomforting, as you don't know how many of them are dying by how many aliens, as the hidden movement will go on during alien turns, usually followed by the civilians running away. With all of this, though, I want to just stress and emphasize that depending on the port of XCOM, when it comes to the DOS version, it's not nearly as frightening and sinister when it comes to the different type of sound effects and music. Let's take a listen to what the battlescape is for Sony PlayStation 1 port. Now that we're here in the Geosphere, or Geoscape, the PlayStation port truly has a bit more of a mystifying, scary, and freaky version of the Geoscape background noise. Let's take a look and listen. UFO Enemy Unknown, while dated with older graphics, does have an older appeal, is definitely one of those leading horror and terrorific games for the October Halloween season that I definitely encourage you to play. The new replay or remake version of XCOM Enemy Unknown is a fantastic one to pair it with, but it still doesn't bring that same type of horror and terror that the original UFO Enemy Unknown brings still to this day.